4:20 p.m. on a hot day when the sun is out. Well done, you all, for being here for a little bit of chit-chat about femvertising, which you're probably going, what is that word that she keeps saying? We're going to get into that and much more, but I think first let's introduce ourselves. So I'm Alaina Crystal. I am a feminist strategist and coach. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a short white woman with a graying pixie cut, and I'm wearing a zodiac cord. Can I turn to you?
How do I follow that?
I know.
Hello, I'm Clemmy Telford. I am a creative director at ITV and a content creator. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a white woman, and I'm wearing white jeans that I hoped would stretch during the day and haven't. They're actually extremely uncomfortable. Black and white top and some black loafers.
I was the guy with the mic issue. My name's Tom Guyton. I'm the managing director of Joan London. My pronouns are he, him. And I am wearing a really bright red jumper. I'm a black man, and I like to say it's a salt and pepper hair, short cropped, but I look like a young Denzel Washington.
Yes, yeah. We vouch for that.
It is, right?
Love it.
Hi everyone, I'm Tanya. Pronounced she, her. I'm in the business of blood and vaginas and vulvas. I'm the global marketing director for Bodyform Only Breasts. And I'm wearing my everyday uniform, jeans, sneakers, a top from Guatemala, and a black blazer.
I'm Debbie Tembo, and I'm an inclusive marketing partner at Creative Equals. I'm a black woman with short afro hair. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm wearing blue jeans and a white cropped jacket. Amazing.
All right, first test, down. This is good. This is good progress. So we are here to talk about femvertising. And if you came to this talk, I'm hoping that you have heard this term before. And equally, if you came to this talk and you've never heard this term, then you're in the right place. So I'm going to sort of set the stage on femvertising and what this term kind of signifies and what we're going to talk about today. And then I'm going to turn to this incredible group of people. I mean, seriously, I get to organize a panel with my friends. Like, how amazing is this? And we're going to talk a little bit about their experience with this term and with this type of marketing. So femvertising is a term that was coined in and around kind of 2014 when there were a raft of ads, many of which are up here, and that really were speaking to women's empowerment and girls' empowerment. So we had everything from Barbie, Imagine the Possibilities, which I had the great privilege of being a part of from its very inception, to Fearless Girl, This Girl Can, of course, the incredible taboo-breaking work of Bodyform, Dove Real Beauty Sketches. So you'll probably remember a lot of these ads. And in this time in the mid-2000s, it was kind of this like golden era of feminism in some ways, right? So if you remember back, this is when Beyonce stood on stage with the word feminist behind her, and she was using Chimamanda's TED Talk as part of her stage performance. Hillary Clinton was just announcing her candidacy for president. And feminism was largely being talked about in the workplace, and very much through kind of a lean-in context via Sheryl Sandberg. And so the ads really represented this kind of lean in, go get 'em women's empowerment message. 10 years later, things feel a little different out here for the ladies, don't they? We've had the Me Too movement. We know that Hillary did not win that election, and Tom and I are not available to talk about that after the panel. But of course, we've had the rise of Trump and authoritarianism across the globe. We've seen the rise of more intersectional movements, which of course are very important to be championing, and they're also bringing a different slant to the feminist movement overall. We've also seen infighting in the feminist movement around things like trans rights, and we've seen women's bodily autonomy threatened across the globe. So of course, this idea of just showcasing women having it all, doing it all, sweating it all, having this kind of amazing empowered life just falls a little flat these days. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to bring some of my favorite people together to talk about just that? So before we get into the hard stuff, we'll do a softball to kind of kick us off. Just a quick rapid fire. What is your favorite femvert and why?
Like we mean. Yeah. Mine is This Girl Can. first of all, from a marketing perspective, but actually from a deeply personal perspective. There was a piece of research that was threaded into that campaign that said, I'm going to try and get this right, that children who see their mothers exercise are 20% more likely to stay and sport themselves. And personally, in early motherhood, every time I felt guilty for going to the gym and finding time for myself, that little piece of research stuck in my head. And so truly, it's had a transformative effect for me, and hopefully for my kids.
Yes. Yeah, the personal relevance. I love that. Tom, what about you?
In honor of tonight's match, my favorite is the Orange Female World Cup ad,
Yeah.
which was unbelievable. And if you haven't seen it, it was an amazing ad campaign where they showed the male French team doing this amazing sort of all these different shots of them. And then at the end of the ad, they actually removed what was special effects and AI, and it was actually the female French team. And it was all about, women can do the same things in football as men can. And I think it was an amazing campaign. It really made you question your own unconscious bias. It really made you question yourself. And it was a really huge campaign during the World Cup. So that was my favorite.
Yeah.
And hopefully tonight it's coming home.
It's coming home. Tanya, what about you?
I love Fearless Girl. And I think what I love most about it is that it is probably one of the most powerful statements about female empowerment and gender equality without using a single word. Advertising campaigns can be so much more than just videos, and that's why I love it. And it's still there, it's, she keeps on standing.
Yes. Yeah. Debbie, how about you?
Mine's the Skull Can too, and it's because it promotes the importance of moving your body, but still celebrating that women are diverse, and that despite that diversity, we can all move our bodies, and that's really important for us to do.
Yeah, wonderful. So a little bit of scene setting, a little bit of context. Maybe you in the audience are thinking, what's my favorite femvert? You can talk about that at the party later, which I would love. So let's get into some tougher stuff, maybe. Tanya, I'd love to start with you first and talk a little bit about the journey that Bodyform has been on over the last 8 or 9 years. Obviously, each Bodyform campaign, some of which I've had the privilege of working on with you, is more taboo-breaking and more representative of women's experiences than the last. And I'd love for you to walk us through the journey of what that's been like as the brand has taken steps to represent women in the most authentic and the bravest way possible. And maybe also talk about what challenges you've come up against, because boy, do I know there have been many that we might be able to get into.
So at Bodyform, or Libresse, how our brand is called in other markets, we started our fearless journey almost a decade ago. And what we found out that the entire category, the entire industry was talking about confidence, and marketeers around the world believed that all we needed to do was provide superior products, towels, tampons, and then we send women out in the world and they feel confident. But the world we all live in is really hostile towards periods. And we realized we had to do something. And it actually started that it was forbidden to show period blood in advertising. You could see blood in movies, in horror shows, in medical shows, in sports, but the only blood that actually doesn't come from an injury, which is period blood, it's a sign of women being healthy, was forbidden. So we wanted to shine a light on that, and this was Blood Normal, and the campaign was ready, and then we weren't allowed to air it because we've been told that we're causing widespread public offense. And funnily enough, the ad that was forbidden to be shown on TV was discussed on TV because we made it public that it wasn't allowed. And by diving deeper into all the taboos that were surrounding periods and women's bodies and vaginas, we found out that actually it will take us quite a while to touch upon all of them. So we continued with Viva la Vulva to shine a light on that there isn't one perfect looking vulva, but we celebrated women in all their glories. In Womb Stories, we've been going where no other brand has been before, inside women's bodies, and in Pain Stories, we wanted to give a tool to not only women, but also doctors and the medical industry to help diagnose endometriosis faster. Because even though 1 in 10 women are suffering from it, it takes average 8 years to diagnose because nobody is believing the pain that women are going through. And one of the last works was Periodsomnia, where we wanted to shine a light on periods in the dark, because women lose up to 5 months of sleep because of not being to sleep as well when they are on their periods. And because we touched upon so many taboos, the obstacles we had to overcome were many. So on the one hand, internally our company wasn't ready. Even though we had an agreed positioning and a mission, as soon as people had seen the work, it made them really uncomfortable. So we did consumer research, and our consumers told us, yeah, this is normal. We want to see that, and that helped step out of the comfort zone. We saw that media owners weren't ready, so they would censor our ad. They would give us advice of what to cut out until nothing was left. Lawyers weren't ready, so we've been told we're objectifying women. We've been told that you can't do it because it's never been done before. We've also seen that people working with us weren't ready, so some don't want to be featured in our ads, some others don't want to have music associated with our ads. So I think what we've learned is that breaking taboos isn't easy, but what we've also learned is that we get better at it. The more we do it, we learned that courage is contagious. And while we started as a small community, now we are a big group of people, and we also learned that we don't need to be the global leading brand. When we started, we were number 6. Now we're number 4 and just crossed 1 billion euros. I think what we learn is somebody just needs to start, and you don't need to have the biggest budgets, you don't need to have the biggest teams, you just have the biggest courage and go for it and not give up. And this is how we overturned advertising laws, and this is why in 2024 you hardly see any brand on the planet daring to advertise with blue liquid, because just women, we bleed blood.
Yeah, I love what you've shared with us there, because you've taken that empowerment story and flipped it on its head, right? It's so empowering for women to see their actual stories represented in your work, rather than selling them a version of empowerment that is very polished and very ultimately probably false, right? You're really representing women's real experiences. And Clemmie, I'd love to come to you to talk a bit about that from a slightly different angle around your work as a content creator and kind of what you've seen with women's experiences on social media platforms. I'm curious what has changed in the last 10 years since Barbie Imagine the Possibilities, Always Like a Girl, which really started this kind of raft of empowering campaigns for women. What possibilities do you think women are starting to be able to envision for themselves now that they maybe didn't then? And how has this shifted the types of content you're seeing online?
Before I answer your question, I just want to say a big, well done, because when you talk about that, we all know every...
Come on, yeah, let's do it. We all want to do it.
It's very easy when you see the end result of a campaign to forget, and we all have had versions of it every single meeting, that you've had to go in and advocate for the thing that you believe in, and to stick at that and not have the edges taken off it over time. It is a huge feat, and it has had a huge impact, but it is because a sum of all those tiny conversations that you must have had. So well done. Now I need to remember the question you asked me. To rewind to the chapter that you're talking about, I had my foot in two camps at the time. I was either there or about to have a job at Meta, so I was very, very heavily bought into the lean-in culture, and I was just starting to build my social platforms as a content creator, and it felt like a fantastic time. I felt confident, I felt empowered. There was a real moment when we were able to tell very authentic stories online, and for me, the very exciting bit was taking stuff that happens in the private sphere and putting it in the public. So there was a lot of conversation about the domestic load, about the juggle, and it really felt, my whole shtick was honest conversations about difficult subjects, and I felt very able to have those, and it felt fantastic. But 10 years down the line, I asked myself, that whole belief that I bought into, that girls can do anything, I now begin to ask at what cost? And maybe we shouldn't have to do everything. And I felt like for a long time we were putting ourselves into 1,000 pieces to try and inhabit being fantastic at business, a fantastic partner, a fantastic mother, a fantastic friend, to keep fit, to absorb all of these narratives and then embody them. But the problem is, or for me at least, is we aren't shown how. And my provocation would be, what's happening inside these organizations? Has the dynamic of leadership changed? Not just having women at the table, but are they able to lead as women? And for that content creator chapter, I stepped out of the industry for 5 years. I've come back and quite shocked that there hasn't been the shifts that I had anticipated. And then my other provocation is, who's in it for the long haul? I think in that chapter we have seen the internet and social explode in a way that is fantastic, but things become trends, things become hot moments. And what we know about these issues is they shapeshift, and I actually wanted to call out Dove for being fantastic. They were such huge advocates of the body positive movement. And then as a parent, I was like, yes, my daughter's going to grow up and hopefully not have inherited all those things that we grew up with. And then you see 10-year-olds putting retinol on their face. And it's like, oh, right, we've whacked that one. This is what we're going after now. But to be fair to Dove, they're right there, and they are campaigning, you know, that about 10-year-olds' faces and how much younger does that need to look. So they're the brands that I respect, and it is, look at this body of work here that we see. It isn't a one and done, it's a long-term commitment.
Yes. I think the consistency part feels really key, and this ties back to, I think, what Uncommon we're speaking about, Lucy from Uncommon was speaking about this morning, about the long-term benefits of doing this work, that advertising to women in an authentic way doesn't have to be a one and done. It's not a trend.
It's not a trend.
And I think when the femvertising term first came out, it felt like a trend, right? And now I think we're starting to ask ourselves, what would it look like to actually center this in the work that we're doing?
And I think actually with that trend thing, trends tend to burn pretty hot. And so it's like, oh, for me, I definitely laddered so far the other way. I'm going to do everything.
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes you don't need to go here.
Yes, exactly. And so that's maybe an interesting opportunity, Debbie, to come to you around both how you do this internally and externally, and how everything that you've experienced from your work at Creative Equals. So not only do we know that it's important to represent people in all of their intersectionalities and diversities in front of the camera, but behind the camera as well. And I'm curious how you're advising clients who want to create more representative work, and what steps brands can take to more authentically represent how women really experience life today.
I think the first thing we would advise clients around is, when you're creating work for underrepresented audiences, is to think about inclusion right upstream in your brand strategy. To create representative work, it's not an afterthought. You can't be thinking about this at the point of casting. You actually need to be embedding it into your strategy. And it's also a great way to really bring strategy and creative closer together, as well, and to get those two working in a more sort of seamless way. And then I think, Alaina, you know this best as well as we all do as well, that who makes the work, shapes the work, and shows up in the work. So to your point, Clemmy, about thinking about internally within organizations, who's sitting at those tables that are actually, creating this work? Do we have diverse representation opining on the work that is being created? It's so important to do that. And to have that diversity of perspective. So we encourage clients to do that. Some of the other principles, just very quickly to think about: positive portrayal. At a minimum, every brand should be unstereotyping the work, and you should be thinking about how can I disrupt convention and be more progressive in the representations that I'm putting out into the world. The other thing, which will lead on to these two case studies, is thinking about cultural specificity. Like, as a brand, you need to be relevant in culture, but you need to be in step with culture. So you can't be putting out work that is going to jar with what is happening in a particular society and with women, as we're talking about them as well. And then finally, authentic narratives. Like, the work you create has got to be authentic. You want to connect with women. You want to show their experiences in a real way. You want to tell real stories. So all of those things matter. And something you said as well is underpinning all of that is consistency.
Yes.
It's about doing all of those things in every single brand activation, every single time, because that's how you build brand credibility and that's how you build brand trust. Now, these two examples speak to specifically cultural specificity. Samsung Night Owls in 2022 released this ad, which basically showed a woman jogging in the streets of London at night, and this was to promote their headphones. And this was at a time that Sarah Everhard and Ainsley Murphy in Ireland had just been murdered. So this was a tone-deaf piece of work. It was insensitive, and it was completely out of step with what was happening in culture. And the brand received a lot of backlash. At the same time, though, Adidas decided to actually kind of take the mickey out of Samsung, but equally, they did it in a sensitive way by releasing the Ridiculous Run, which showed women also running at night in the streets of London, but surrounded by police vehicles and being escorted. So showing the real challenges that women actually face around jogging on their own, and particularly at night. And what they did, they also did some research which found that 65% of men understood that women had these concerns, but only 18% of them felt that it was their responsibility to do something about it. So the reason why they put out Ridiculous Run was actually to raise awareness about the real challenges that women face around jogging, but Adidas went and took it a step further, which I think is a really important point, and that's around material action. Yes. They continue to create a culture of jogging for women that is safe around the world through their Women Who Run campaign. So whilst they put out this work, which is super representative to the real experiences of women, they've also gone and backed it up with material action by continuing to raise awareness around this, to make men aware of their role and to be allies to women. So all of those things together, I think, is what brands need to really think about when they are creating work.
And I think that point about action is so spot on, because it's just one thing to show it in a film, and Tanya, you spoke about this as well. But what I love about the Adidas work is, to me, that is true social impact, right? That they are in conversation with women who run, that they are building toolkits and programs that give women what they need in order to run safely. They're providing programs where women can meet other women to run with. So they're really looking at the systemic issue. and trying to grapple with that versus just showing an ad and going, but look at the watch. The watch is great, right? You can see it at night. So I love the juxtaposition of these. I also love what you said, Debbie, about who makes the work shapes the work. And Tom, that feels like an important moment to come to you because you are the managing director of Joan, which is a female-founded agency, which is very sadly still a minority category in our industry. I'm curious what is different about Joan's approach to creating campaigns for women and girls that feel culturally fluent and relatable and create change for those audiences.
It's an interesting question. And I mean, it still shocks me that in 2024, the fact that our agency is female founded is still interesting in news. Like, it's crazy to me. But I think, you know, Debbie, to your point, Lisa Clooney and Jamie Robinson, who are our founders, started Joan because they were sort of tired of being in rooms and their voices not being taken seriously. And also, like, thinking around how do we ensure that we are passing the mic, we're allowing diverse voices have like a point of view and a perspective, both in like leadership, but also in the creative that we're developing. And so they sort of created Joan to be a place for that kind of work and that kind of sort of environment. It's to your question around like, how do we do this sort of femvertising? It's a little bit, we're very cautious at Joan around it because it's awful to say this, but I think as an agency that's female founded, there is an assumption by some that we only do work for females, by females, because, you know, we don't say that the agencies that were created by straight white men only do work for straight white men, but there's this sort of assumption that because it was created by two females, we only can do work for that. So we're always very cautious about how we approach that because we don't want to get sort of pigeonholed. But I think as we look at femvertising, I think it's really about equality. It's really about allowing different voices to have a point of view and a perspective and telling different voices. And to your point, Debbie, allowing different people to sort of have the mic and tell their own stories. So we are cautious, but we do not shy away from it. It's something that we really lean into. And I think particularly given that we are female founded, it is a sense of sort of ensuring when we do this kind of work, it's representative, it's authentic, but I think more so it's really empathetic. So, you know, we did a campaign last year with Luna Daily, which is a body care company. And similarly to Tanya, we really wanted to sort of remove the stigma around vulva, which has a terrible sort of stigma associated with it. We found stats that 60% of women can't even identify their own vulva, which was awful. And I think there's such a potential for that campaign to be incredibly preachy and like, this is what you need to do. But I think, you know, our creative, led by a female creative, was super focused on ensuring that it felt authentic, but really empathetic to the audience. And I think that kind of work is only possible when you allow different types of voices to tell the story and you ensure that you're passing the mic. And I think it works in femvertising, but it also works in so many different other elements of our sort of creative journey. And it's something that's really important to us at Joan.
What I also loved about that campaign is it felt joyous.
Yes.
Right? Like how joyous to walk by a billboard that says vulva. I was like, yes, thank you. We love this, right? And I think that's also quite a big tonal contrast from a lot of the femvertising of 10 years ago. So a lot of it felt really serious. And I remember when we were navigating the Barbie Imagine the Possibilities campaign, we were looking at work that looked really serious. A lot of the Barbie stuff, you know, the kind of early stage work that we were looking at was all of the ways in which little girls' imaginations are held back by society. And it finally took our executive creative director, who was a man, just BT dubs, to go, Barbie is pink and sparkly and fun and full of unicorns. Why are we making such sad work? And that's when we flipped it all on its head and just went, imagine the possibilities for girls. Imagine a world in which girls believe they can be anything. So I think in this new vein of kind of femvertising 2.0, the celebratory work, Tanya, that you've done, we've done together with Viva La Vulva, the work you've done with Luna Daily, I think there's so much to the ability to laugh at the ridiculousness of the Samsung ad, to kind of bring a little joy, a little lightness to the story along the way. And speaking of Barbie and joy and lightness, we're going to keep talking about the Barbie movie. Yes, it premiered a year ago, but it's literally the only thing I want to talk about. So I have the mic. We're going to talk about it. it's still talked about as a wild success, we know, right? It garnered over $1 billion. I did not stutter, $1 billion. And it made it one of the highest grossing films of all time, particularly one that is directed by a woman. The film itself tackles so many difficult subjects around feminism, patriarchy, and equality. So I'm going to throw this one to all of you, and we can just sort of have a bit of an open chat. Based on the film's success, can and should brands be feminists? And what is your advice for brands that might want to follow in Barbie's sparkly pink footsteps? Who wants to kick us off? Yeah?
I will.
You were like, you were ready.
Yeah.
He was ready. Here he is.
The
power of the red.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm like,
draws
it's the
me.
red.
Yeah.
It's being in the center, too. I'm like loving this energy. I think there is such an amazing, I think, again, feminism is about equality. And I think that is an imperative part when you look at the Barbie movie. And I think so much of the story, to your point, was about feminism and patriarchy, but you needed the Ryan Gosling of it all to make the Barbie movie happen. And I think it is an imperative part. I also think there's a reality that it was so focused on humor, to your point earlier.
Yes.
You know, it felt lighthearted. It felt like it was like a spoonful of sugar with the medicine. You know, you were really learning something but laughing while you were doing it. And so I do think it should show so many of things for us that humor, there's a role for humor, which I know there's a talk about humor right now. But I think it's really about how do we focus on equality as part of our messaging moving forward.
Love that. Love a bit of humor. Women do love to laugh. It's this like weird thing. I know. Can you believe it? Tanya, yeah.
I think if you believe in human rights and if you believe in equality and equal chances for men and women, the answer is yes. And if you sell products to women, or if you want women to buy it, then you shouldn't even ask the question, right? So it's not should or can, but you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
I think brands should be feminists because it is about equality. I don't think that every brand has the permission or the right to play in talking up about female issues. And that's why I agree with Paula very much, who was on the previous panel. Like, it's not for every brand, but should they be feminists and stand up for equality? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, my feeling is check your motivation. If it is just to shift your bottom line, then absolutely not.
Yep.
And also, if you're going to be, then you have to be open to actually understanding what it is to be a feminist and what it is to be a woman. And it definitely isn't the preconceived idea that you might have, and that is subject to change as well.
I love all of these responses, and I think what I'm taking from this is think it through. That it's a natural response that equality is good for everyone, right? That equality is not about one over the other, but it's good for everyone. Think it through. What's your motivation? Check your motivation. I really like that. Right, we're going to do... Oh, Tanya.
Because what you've mentioned, I think it's about finding the right spot for your brand to be in.
Yes.
So for Bodyform, we are not fighting for equal pay.
Right.
Because we're a period care brand.
Yeah.
But we're standing up to remove all taboos and stigmas and stereotypes around periods and women's bodies. So I think there is enough room to secure that. You just need to know where you have credibility to play.
I love what you've just said about that there's enough room as well, because to me that's feminism, right? It's a big tent, and there should be a lot of room for everyone in there to be able to work together, to be in coalition, to be collaborating over competing, right? I think sometimes when it comes to brands and agencies, it's tempting to kind of elbow one another out. But if this panel can show you anything, let's all sit up here and have a nice old chit chat and sort of see how it goes, see what develops from there. Right, last quick fire question, and then we're going to do a little bit of Q&A. I'd like for each of you to finish this sentence. Clemmy, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, pressure.
The pressure. The future for women is?
Still full of possibilities.
Still full of possibilities. Tom?
Progressing, but still a way to go.
Progressing, still a way to go. Don't I feel that? Tanya?
Now.
Now.
Limitless.
Limitless. I mean, if that doesn't inspire you at 5 p.m. on a sunny Wednesday, I literally do not know what will. I think we're going to go to a little bit of a Q&A. See the people, hear from the people. Does anyone have any questions for this incredible group of
Dina has.
folks? Dina, always, let's hear it.
Really enjoyed that. Thank you, everybody. I've been speaking to a few of my friends who have young men as children, especially kind of around the kind of early teens age, that watch the Barbie movie. And of actually having to have some quite challenging conversations with them at home around how that movie made them feel, because they're growing up in a different world now than perhaps we did. What kind of advice would you give to them? Because I know there's a lot of reason why we do this, is like it needs to go a bit one way this way before it cuts back to the middle. But there are young men that are growing up in the world. You know, what would you say to them?
Ooh, such a good question. Does anyone want to dive in? Who's feeling it? Clemmy?
I'm feeling panicked because I have some young men that are just tipping into that space. And my instinct is to say it's less about what you say and it's more about what you role model. And, you know, the fact that I want to sign their sister up to play football as much as I want to sign them up, the fact that we flipped it over and that my husband was a stay-at-home dad and I've worked, and I hope that goes a long way. Yeah, I always just believe in showing them by doing, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think if you have a look at the Unstereotype Alliance, they've done a lot of work around the portrayal of men and specifically looking at the challenges that, you're right, young boys are facing today, especially, you know, with the likes of influencers like Andrew Tate, dare I say his name, and give him a platform. But, you know, these are toxic, there's so much toxic masculinity that is going on around them. And it is challenging for them. And one of the things that the Unstereotype Alliance is really looking at and really speaking up about is that, as much as I mentioned positive portrayal earlier of women, we also need to do the same for men and everybody else in society as well, and think about how can we more positively portray men, so that young boys have role models that they can look up to and help them during what is a really difficult time.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of how ridiculous the term femvertising is, right? That like we're not going to call it like menvertising if it advertises to men, right? That's utterly ridiculous. And I think that's part of the point, is that everyone deserves advertising that represents them, right? In which they feel represented, no matter what gender identity, no matter what race, no matter what religion. Everyone deserves advertising that represents them. And I think, in thinking about your question, Dina, I'm kind of hearkening back this morning to the Get Britain Talking campaign from ITV, which is just keep talking to all of the young people in your life, right, about all of these topics. Because I think when we don't talk to them, we create a vacuum that gets filled by the, dare I say his name, of it all, right? That gets filled by what they're seeing on social media instead. So talking to them about these topics, I think, is really critical. Anyone else? Yes, up here in the front. Yes, no, it's you. It's you with the gorgeous gold glasses. I think we're getting you a mic.
I probably don't need a mic. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I was just going to ask you about a couple of things. First of all, do you think by using the word femvertising, you're causing a trend, which therefore makes it difficult for you to uphold over a longer period of time because you're giving it a trendy name? So that was my first question, kind of statement. But the real question is, on the stage, we've talked about not having correct representation around the table when an idea is born or delivered or created. In your circles, who are your female role models and icons? Because I need some new ones.
Ooh.
What was the second?
So
Female role models and icons.
Female role models and icons. So to your point on femvertising as a trend, I think that is such a good question. And I think that also speaks to the ridiculousness of how you wouldn't call it menvertising either. So I think, agree. Like, we don't want to actually give femvertising a platform. I think it's very in quotes, but I like your point about that. And then the question was about female role models and icons who are inspiring us these days, which is such a good question. Ooh. Does Anyone have anyone
Good
that's
one.
like massively coming to mind? I feel like if I say Michelle Obama, everyone's going to be like, you have to get off stage. Like, it's too pat, but I'm also like,
I've got one. You go.
yeah.
I love Serena Williams because she's just an icon, and she understood that women who create their own companies aren't founded. So with her having the financial power, creating a fund so she can do it, and I think I'm applauding everyone who is understanding what's going on and is actively doing something to drive change.
I love that.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
That is a really good one.
I was going to say, actually, if I keep it within the industry,
Yeah.
I would say Rachel Lowenstein. And if
Yes.
you don't know her, go and look her up on LinkedIn. She's just she does phenomenal work specifically around raising awareness around neurodiversity and the importance of that in, making and shaping the work, and having that voice and perspective at the table as well. But yeah, so within the industry, I'd say she would be a role model for me.
What about you two? Any icons?
I'm going to flip it a bit of a different way and rephrase it to who inspires me. And this is a slightly cheesy answer, but I'm going to go with it. My daughter, who's 6, because in her I see the small girl that all of us were, which is unapologetic, prepared to take up space, frankly quite difficult, and a challenge to parent. And I do believe we all started out like that and had those edges taken off us. And if I try and think that I don't want any of that to change about her, although I would like her to put her shoes on for school, that is my inspiration to keep young girls and young boys, but as exactly as they are.
I love that. Tom, any last icons?
I mean, I was going to say Michelle Obama too, and I feel like that's lame. So I'm
Leave it to
now
the
going to
Americans.
say the ultimate female, which is Beyonce. I think
Hello.
Oh, yeah.
and I know that's basic, but I think she is doing so much
Absolutely.
for everyone culturally, and she's driving culture forward. Both black culture, but also just culture in general. And I am so utterly inspired by everything that she does to sort of change the way that we think about ourselves and the way that we think about art and the way that we think about how we can continue to grow as a culture. So
Yeah.
I love that.
basic, but Beyonce.
I mean, you can't ever hate on Beyonce. And I would probably say the young girl activists who are out there who are literally doing frontline work on reproductive rights, climate justice, equal rights from a race perspective. They're just leading every movement. Gun violence in the U.S. I'm like, we gotta, like, if these girls are gonna save the world, who is saving these girls, right? Like, we gotta get to work on their behalf as well. So, our time is up. You've been beautiful. Enjoy your time in Margate. Thank you, folks, and thank you to this gorgeous panel.